What's up everyone, welcome back to Recoup channel. My name's Mickey. In today's video, we are gonna cover the return on investment by investing in a warehouse management system. Every single time I send a quote to a customer, they question, what am I gonna get out of this WMS? What am I gonna benefit? How much money will I get back over what period of time? Well, in this video, I've broken down an entire spreadsheet for you containing every single parameter to show you just how profitable a warehouse management system can be. So let's get right into it. All right, so this is a spreadsheet that I've created, and bear in mind that in this video, we're gonna focus on the wholesale distribution niche. Those of you that distribute food, ice cream, dairy, dry goods, anything in a warehouse that comes in and out, this is who this spreadsheet specifically is catered to. So on this screen, I've got all of the parameters that I asked my customers to provide to me in order to generate this ROI. And it all starts with the total number of cases moved per week. So let's say hypothetically, you are moving 10,000 cases through the warehouse per week. Let's say that your average warehouse employee costs $20 an hour, 400 sales orders per week that you're picking, packing, and shipping, 5 purchase orders per week that you're receiving. You're doing 1 bulk inventory adjustment to fix any discrepancies manually into your ERP per week. Let's say you're spending an average of 20 minutes taking all of those adjustments and keying them into your ERP. Let's say that the time spent counting inventory discrepancies is about 3 minutes per discrepancy. And that's because you've got to walk out from your desk to the warehouse, go to the pallet position, count the item, find the discrepancy, then walk all the way back and hand key that in. And honestly, 3 minutes is very conservative. It's probably gonna be more like 5 minutes per discrepancy. Nonetheless, these discrepancies that occur on the fly when you don't use a WMS will no longer occur if you do use a WMS. Next, you have an average dollar amount per invoice. How big are your invoices? Let's say that it's $200 per invoice. And then we have the average number of stops per driver. Let's say that a driver does 13 stops a day because their shifts are 10 hours a day. Actually, you know what? Let's call it 8 hours a day. That's probably what most of you have for your drivers. The average hourly per driver, let's call it $20 an hour. The amount of time the driver spends picking the order out of the truck. So this is only applicable if you pick to cart and you bulk pick to cart. So you're picking to a 3-tiered metal cart and then you're putting these carts onto the truck, and this is used a lot in the ice cream industry. If you're picking to pallet, this doesn't apply because you're likely picking by order to pallet. But again, let's say it takes your drivers on average to pick the order out of the truck and move it to their dolly or their push cart. Let's say it takes, 5 minutes. Next, we've got the average shrinkage per week in the warehouse. How many adjustments do I have per week? Well, it's pretty standard at a company this size to have about $1,000 a week. Next, we have the cost of mispicks per month. Now, this is hard to quantify because if you mispick, well, that means that your customer doesn't get the product and they're either gonna be shorted or you're gonna send them the wrong product, which means you're either gonna lose the sale directly correlated with the product that you mispicked, or it means if you're traveling a long distance and you only visit that customer once a week, that means you're gonna have to send a truck back to that customer to put that product back on the shelf. Let's say that you have $1,000 worth of cost per month due to mispicks. Next is how many pages per order are printed on average. Let's say 2 pages per order. Next, we have the percentage of warehouse inventory discrepancies. So how accurate is your inventory? That's pretty easy to compute. It's the number of discrepancies divided by the total number of inventory positions. Let's say that my inventory is 98% accurate week to week. And let's say that the analyst that counts that inventory, the person, the administrator, the manager, cost me $20 an hour. Next, we have the gross profit percentage. This again is only applicable to those of you that are pulling by item or by stop or by store and placing those transactions on a cart. If not, you don't need to use this for any reason. But for those of you that pull a cart and then load the carts to the truck, let's say at the gross profit on those transactions is 10%. Next, we have the average case value. Let's say it's $20. The number of checkers, so how many people you have checking or spot checking orders before they get placed on the truck. Let's say I've got 2 checkers at 20 bucks an hour as we defined up here. And then we've got the number of expired cases per month. So how many cases go out of rotation because somebody left the pallet in the other extreme portion of the warehouse and then they forgot to pull it. So the average number of cases, let's call it 1 pallet per month just goes bad, and that's pretty standard across all of these distributors. Let's say a pallet has 120 cases. Well, there you go. Next, you've got the hardware costs. So we've talked about all of your implicit costs and all of your parameters when implementing a system. On the hardware side, you've got the number of people that are going to be picking. So how many people are picking at one time? You've got the number of people receiving, putting away replenishment, and then the number of printers you need for labels. That's normally 2, 1 for picking labels and 1 for receiving labels. And down here you've got some arbitrary monthly fees I put in for your company. If you were to use a WMS, this is pretty industry standard. Again, this will vary from customer to customer, but assuming that you've got $1,500 in warehouse fees, you've got $700 in voice picking fees, which is $2,200 a month. The cost of owning the warehouse management system is $26,400. And then you've got your setup fees. Setup, implementation, all of the consulting and all of the setup that's required to get the warehouse management system off the ground. Again, an arbitrary value of $150,000. At this point, you're like, wow, Mickey, that's a super high number. Yes, it is. It's ridiculously high. But it's ridiculously high when you look at that number in a vacuum. When you see what it's going to give you in return, you'll be blown away. Next is the amount of time it's going to take to implement a warehouse management system, and normally that time frame is anywhere between 4 months at the very least and 6 months at the most. So now we go over to our profit and loss. I've made 2 sections for you guys. If you only use scanning, these are your savings. If you use voice, these are your savings. So now let's get into the actual P&L. If you just do scanning with the parameters that we've keyed in, okay? Year 1 on put away and replenishments, you're gonna save $5,200, and year 2, $10,400, because now your employees don't have to think about where to place pallets when put away and where to pull pallets and place them on a replenishment. And the reason why it's less year 1 and more year 2, well, that's because year 2, you're getting to use a system the entire year, whereas year 1, you only got to use it 6 months because it takes 6 months to implement or so. So that's what you get in put away and replenishments. And I've made this little ROI spreadsheet where it calculates based on the number of cases you move, the number of pallets, and basically the number of pallet positions and the amount of time it takes for your people to look for these pallets in the warehouse. Normally we see that it's between 2 and 3 minutes it will take them to look for these pallets, and then the total save per year, no longer having to look for these pallets. Next, you have your picking. So on picking, you're getting a bunch of efficiency by using scanning over paper, because more than anything, you're alleviating all of the mistakes, and then the actual picking process is a single scan to confirm you're at the right location. If you use voice, here's where you see a big increase. And this increase is a product of actually the fact that your people don't have to use their hands. They could just focus on picking as many cases per hour as possible. Next, you have your data entry. Remember how we talked about your dispatching about 400 sales orders and receiving about 10 POs? What's costing somebody in the back office time, probably 3 minutes per transaction, to hand key those transactions. That's not even counting the cost associated with you making errors on those transactions. So keying in the wrong quantities, the wrong items, the wrong lot numbers or expirations. Nonetheless, those savings are there. And if you actually want to look at it in terms of how it was calculated, here it is in the data entry ROI. Going back here to the P&L. Next, we're going to talk about shrinkage. Again, we said about $1,000 you're adjusting out of inventory per week at a company this size, that's really not that much money, but still it's a $52,000 a year expense with shrinkage. And a WMS is gonna allow you to find where that shrinkage is originating, if somebody's stealing from you, where they're stealing, and ultimately that value gets plugged in here. Next, you have mispicks. We talked about $1,000 a month in product that was picked incorrectly, quantities that were sent incorrectly to customers, or whatever mistakes on delivery occurred. Well, that's a $12,000 expense. And the beauty of having a WMS is that it'll tie into your delivery system. And because the customer is the one that checks the product on delivery, those discrepancies should be notated through their tablet or through their device when they're making the delivery, because all of those discrepancies are mapped back to a performance report by picker. So if the picker picked the wrong item, over picked the item, under picked the item, those things will all be put on the delivery device for the driver, and then they'll be mapped back to an accuracy value in lace up. So for every single picker, we're gonna have cases picked per hour, and we're gonna have accuracy. And you're gonna focus on those pickers that are the lowest performing to coach them up and make them better. Next, we've got ink and paper. The amount of money these distributors spend on ink is ridiculous. Well, that expense disappears because a WMS does not use ink for any reason. Extra adjustments. So adjustments you're having to walk out to the warehouse and do because your people are telling you that there's product there, but there's no product in the system, right? Or there's product in the system, but it's not physically there. With a WMS, you find those issues on the fly. You don't have to wait reactively for those discrepancies to arise, nor do you have to go look for those discrepancies. They're prompted to you. And there is that time savings associated with you having to walk out to the warehouse to inspect and to look for and to count. So next we've got rotation. The pallet that went out of code or out of date because you had it at the most extreme part of the warehouse and you did not rotate it down. Remember, we said that's about one pallet per year, hypothetically, and it's $2,400 in value. So now to the P&L. Here we have, on this side, if you just do scanning, and on this side, if you just do voice. Your ROI for this entire implementation, assuming a setup fee of $150,000 and around $3,000 a month is, or actually it's $2,640 divided by 12, whatever that dollar amount is, or $18,000 divided by 12, whatever that dollar amount is. Nonetheless, year one, you're upside down 91,000, and year two, you are up $149,000, which means you're gonna pay back the system in 19.36 months, and everything after that is pure profit. Over here with voice, you're going to pay back the system in 20.59 months. And the reason why is because the cost and the efficiencies added for the voice at this volume don't outweigh the amount of productivity you gain by implementing voice. So if we go to the base data and we change this to 40,000 cases picked per week, right? You're gonna see exponentially how much more profitable it is to have voice. But for the sake of this demo, let's move it back to 10,000, go back to the P&L, and we will see that after year two, you are in the green, and after that, everything you do in this system or any other WMS is pure profit. Now, I've also added this field down here, assuming that these calculations are too aggressive. Let's soften the calculation and say that no, we are only gonna receive 90% of the benefit that we're anticipating from this calculation. Well, still, you're gonna pay back the system in 22 months if you use voice, or 21 months if you do just scanning. Shoot, let's say it's 60%. Either way, if you plan on being in business for more than 5 years, you're going to get a profit in 2 years and change, and then everything else is yours to keep for the following 2.5 years to the tune of $150,000 per year. Think about that for a minute. This system will put about $150,000 in profit back into your pocket. So again, whether or not you use voice or just scanning is solely dependent on how many cases you move per week in your warehouse. And besides that, you can take a look at this spreadsheet down below, pinned in the comments. Fill in your values in this base data. If you're savvy in Excel, go in and modify any other value that you saw that is not incorporated. And as a matter of fact, I've got another one here. And this is a huge value that I did not even take into account. And this is called employee productivity. When you have a WMS, you know, let's say it's employee productivity. So let's say, for instance, that you've got employees that lollygag 1 hour in their entire shift where they stop doing something physically in the warehouse and they stand around in the corner. Now, on average with my customers, that employee mess around time is about 1 hour per employee per day. So we want to get that down to about 30 minutes per employee per day. And if you do a simple function here, assuming you've got, let's say 15 employees in the warehouse, you're gonna save 30 minutes per day, right? So that's about 7.5 man hours, and you're gonna multiply that times the dollars per hour per employee, and then you're gonna multiply times the number of work days per year, and you're talking about another $40,500 in productivity added here, and $40,500 in productivity added here. Now I'm putting this in year 2 again because you won't get that year 1. Nonetheless, look at how that just blew up your net profit and loss. That's because a WMS will tell you exactly the employees' downtime, when they're not doing anything, when they're not working, and you can optimize that to trim off time to maximize the amount of time that they're spending working instead of messing around in the warehouse. So as you've seen here, even if I give you 60% return from what we're promising, you're still in the green after 28 months. But assuming that we get to 100%, which is what we've been able to do with many of our customers, you will pay back this system in about 1.5 years. And that should give you some context in terms of how damn valuable these WMS systems are. So sorry about the long, tedious, data-driven video, but I really wanted to show you guys what you're gonna earn from a system like this. If you enjoyed that video, if you agreed or disagreed, go down below, give me a comment, give me a like, subscribe, all of that stuff, and I look forward to seeing you next video. Take care. Peace.